So this afternoon, we're going to have the research and science talks. And to begin with, we will be hearing from Ruben, Cauchi from ALS Malta on beating ALS in the most generous nation in the world.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Ruben Cauchi from ALS Malta Foundation. First and foremost, I wish to thank the organizers for this wonderful meeting in this great city. And today, I'm going to delineate our work, the work of our emerging organization aimed at beating ALS in the most generous nation in the world. And that country is Malta. For those that don't know where Malta is, I can tell you that Malta is a European island state in the center or middle of the Mediterranean Sea. It's actually one of the most tiny countries in the world, therefore you may have not heard about it. It's actually an archipelago composed of 7 tiny islands, only 2 being inhabited, and those are Malta and the small sister island of Gozo. Collectively, Malta totals a landmass of 316 square kilometers, which means that it can fit within the United States more than 30,000 times. And that's an astonishing number. Now, allow me to tell you some interesting and at times amusing, but certainly true facts about Malta. First and foremost, I can tell you that Malta is super old. So our country boasts of up to 11 megalithic temples, with some dating more than 5,000 before Christ. And that means that UNESCO lists these as being the oldest freestanding structures in the world, so older than the pyramids, and older than the UK famous Stonehenge. So sorry for the Brits present here today. Malta is also the place where blockbuster movies are made, all right? So I can tell you that Gladiator, probably you have seen that, Troy, recently Assassin's Creed, Captain Phillips, and the world-famous TV series Game of Thrones were all filmed in sunny and beautiful Malta. And allow me to tell you a little bit about the people of Malta, or we call them the Maltese. So Malta is home to a little over 420,000 inhabitants. That's a tiny number. However, during the summer months, we receive up to 2 million tourists. So we always say that during those hot and humid months, a coup d'etat is always possible. And the Maltese are actually passionate people. They usually they choose a side and defended till their death. So at 92% voter turnout is actually one of the highest in the world. And talking about the rich and famous, I can point to many Maltese scattered around the world, but most famous, I think, is tenor Joseph Calleja. For those that love opera, I do. And Joseph Calleja recently opened the New York Metropolitan Opera 1718 season in their beautiful production of Bellini's Norma, and that was amazing. And talking about opera, I can also tell you that in Malta, especially in the small island of Gozo, there is more opera per square kilometer than anywhere in the world. Now, being tiny, my country doesn't feature that much in the top lists of international rankings, and therefore it is a surprise to many here that my country finds itself in the top places within the listing the most generous countries or nations in the Western world. Indeed, the World Giving Index, published by the Charities Aid Foundation, consistently lists Malta as the top country in terms of the percentage number of people that donated to charity in the last month. Indeed, at 75 to 80%, that means that 2 out of 3 countries, 2 out of 3 Maltese citizens donate money to charity. So the setting was favorable for us to start raising funds directed towards ALS care and research. But we had a big problem. And that problem was that in 2015, you remember quite well that that was, in 2014, that was the year of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. In Malta, there was no national ALS charity. However, this viral social phenomenon inspired a young individual whose name is Bjorn Formosa, who unexpectedly, a year later, in July 2015, received unexpectedly a death sentence, an ALS diagnosis. This young individual, in a short time period, successfully founded ALS Malta and organized the first fundraising event, and that was a massive ice bucket challenge. And Bjorn stole the heart of the Maltese nation, and therefore the time was ripe a few months later for our budding organization to organize the first TV fundraising campaign on Malta's most watched primetime TV program, and that program we call Biobank. It was a success because in that evening, close to €500,000 were collected. Now, that allowed us to start our work as a foundation. In fact, our first board meeting occurred in January 2016. And a few months later, basically after Bjorn's wedding, in the honeymoon of Bjorn and Maria, we know these guys now quite well. My group, ALS group at the University of Malta, Malta's main university, we call that the Università di Malta, we launched with the organization the first research project, the first ALS research project. And this year, we organized again another highly successful TV fundraising campaign. We succeeded in one evening to raise €1 million, and that went into the setting up of Malta's first residential home for ALS patients, and that home now has the name of Dar Bjorn, which translated in English means Bjorn's home. Now, the aim of our organization is to beat ALS. So how are we doing it from a research point of view? First thing that we did was for the foundation to fund the creation and maintenance of an ALS M&D biobank, a unique ALS M&D biobank. We are making use of this biobank to screen the DNA or the genome of our ALS patients. And that is allowing us to find those faults, those variants in the DNA that increase the risk of ALS or that cause ALS. And we think that by finding those genes, disease-causing genes, genes that modify the course of the disease, genes that increase the risk of ALS, we think that finding those will allow us to target those genes by precision medicine initiatives, and in doing so, we can develop a therapy tailored, targeted for our Maltese ALS population. So, how did we create the biobank? So we targeted patients registered with the organization, with our organization. We went mostly to their homes. We collected a blood sample and detailed clinical information subject to consent. Then we went into the lab. We extracted the DNA, and we did sequencing. We read the complete DNA, the whole genome sequencing. And in our precious biobank, we have a few patients, just 14, but we think that this is the tip of the iceberg because we're constantly finding more patients. Most of them are male, and in their majority, the patients are more than 50 years old. And we have a few familial ALS cases. Now, interestingly, we found out that in Malta, most of the patients concentrate in the south of the country. And we think that there could be a link between some polluting industries which are present only in the south of the country, and those are the shipbuilding industry, power generation plants, and airplane maintenance, and even the airstrip. They are located in the south. Now, how are we using the information that we gained from the Biobank, especially the genetic information, to reverse ALS symptoms? This is a big target, but that is where we want to go. So we're making use of animal models. And because we're a tiny nation with a tiny budget, we are making use of fruit flies. And fruit flies are cheap to culture, to maintain, to manipulate, but importantly, they are close to us at a genetic level. Indeed, I can tell you that more than 75% of human disease-linked genes, including the genes that have been linked to ALS so far, they are present in the fly DNA. So, in the lab, we are introducing patient mutations in the fly DNA, and we're seeing whether we get ALS in flies, meaning we get flies which have muscle weakness, and that means that these flies cannot climb, cannot move, cannot fly. Importantly, we're making use of these ALS animal models to screen for drugs that improve the ALS symptoms, to screen for genes that modify the course of the disease, and to do gene repair. Okay, at the moment we have these innovative gene editing therapies, gene editing techniques, methods, which have been developed by the Broad Institute here in Boston, amongst other key institutes. And we think that by using these strategies, we can develop therapies that can potentially reverse ALS symptoms. So, in conclusion, I can tell you that in just 2 years of operation, our organization, ALS Malta, has worked tirelessly to increase ALS awareness in my country, in Malta, and our success can be measured in numbers. Indeed, in just 2 years, more than €3 per capita, per person, were donated to our organization, and that is a very big number. And we have improved patient quality of life substantially, and our efforts have culminated in the opening up of the first residential home for ALS patients recently, last month, November. And at the moment, we are strengthening our national ALS research program, and we're doing so by investing in people. And therefore, we are awarding scholarships, branded Bjorn Formosa scholarships, to young, talented individuals, to young scientists, and training these people to become Malta's leading ALS MND investigators of tomorrow. We have so far successfully sequenced, whole genome sequenced, 13 of our ALS patients, and at the moment we're doing the data mining to identify those faults, those defects that cause ALS, and we have embarked on a path towards identifying certain therapies that might reverse ALS. And we believe that Malta's model can serve as a paradigm for budding organizations, emerging organizations in tiny and not so tiny countries. And I can end by telling you that our work has only just begun.
Okay, and with 1 minute to go, any questions? Yes.
How many people? We are doing that at the moment, okay? We're trying to identify those. At the moment in our biobank, in our study, we have 14, okay? But before coming here, we have identified another 5, another 6.
Yes, Janet.
So, which particularly means that the incidence is a little bit higher than the normal.
I'm intrigued by your incident spread with
Yep.
so many down in the south. Does that match the population spread as well?
We have to check that. Possibly, there's more people living in the south Yes, that could be true.
And yeah, thank you.
But we have to look into that, yeah.
And Ruben, although I would like to give you full points and extra minutes for the opening, which was so entertaining, and we'll
Good.
all be visiting Malta now. And I'm
Great.
sure that part of that subsidy is coming from Tourism Malta, actually, to attract them.
Exactly, we're taking some grants and we're using that for research.
Yes. Thank you very much for your presentation.